we're going to talk about Scaling New Heights 2021 in Fort Worth, Texas. The both of us were in that conference, and about 700, from what I understand, possibly about 700 other people as well.
I feel like it was more. I think it was just 700 attendees plus all the sponsors and everyone else as well. So it was more like 1,000 people in total or something like that, because there was a lot of vendors there.
Right, absolutely. So to the agenda, we'll talk about the actual conference. So we'll discuss the conference as a whole. And then we'll talk about next year's version of the conference. So when somebody's watching this and gets really excited about going to a conference, and this just happened, right? Just this week. So if you wanted to get this sort of experience again next year, I will discuss that. And we'll do a review. We'll talk about the production values and food quality and quality of training, all that stuff. Then we'll talk about the areas of opportunities, the things that I would have done different or what I would love to see different next year. Then we'll talk about the real conference, the socials and the after parties. At least Andrew and I, we call that the real conference. Yeah. Then we'll talk about Intuit's representation in the conference, which, spoiler alert, there was not much of it there. And then we'll talk about the vendor floor shout outs. We walked around the vendor floor, talked to all these app companies and the leaders of these app companies, and maybe bring you some news about what they're thinking about and what they shared out with us. And at the end, we'll just have a free for all on, Andrew, what do you think your ideal conference would look like? And me as well. So let me start by talking about what the actual conference is. So Scaling New Heights is a conference that's about 13 years old. Again, I don't know all the facts 100%, but I'm pretty sure that's pretty close. So this will be the 13th episode. It might be possibly the 14th, but that's around there where it is. It is run by Joe Woodard, has always been run by Joe Woodard. The conference is in many ways an extension of his personal brand and his leadership. His style is sort of stamped throughout the conference. Every year there's a theme, sort of an overarching theme in the conference that's supposed to dictate the tone and the type of topics that get discussed. This year's theme was Unstoppable. Next year's theme is Thrive. In the past, they're typically words indicative of going to the next level as a practitioner, as an accountant, as a QuickBooks consultant, as an IT consultant, as a whatever small business advisor. It's like sort of always going to the next level, not letting environmental factors stop you or affect you, and educate yourself so you can bring more higher quality services to your customers. I personally don't think the themes matter all that much, but they're important to sort of give the conference some personality. So I actually agree the fact that they give the themes. But at the end of the day, regardless of what the theme is, the general theme is get educated, network with people, take your practice to the next level. That's really kind of all it is. So you got anything to add on that, Andrew?
Yeah, I just think it's about, like, to use my dad's language, constant, never-ending improvement. And it's about community and gathering with like-minded people, building your knowledge, building your relationships in a way that's like fun and passion-inducing. And the thing is that there's really something magical about these conferences, whatever the theme is. And I agree with you. I think having a theme is important for just giving it some structure a little bit and giving it a whole theme that guides the motives of everything. And I think that's great. But it's ultimately about that energy that you get by being around people who are just passionate about what they do and who share similar interests. All do, very similar things, like slight differences. And it really is interesting to see the different perspectives. And I liken it to, like, if anyone's ever been to a Tony Robbins presentation, that man has a way of just changing the energy in the room. And I think that that's what happens when we all get together. Like, you can literally, it's like you walk in those conferences and you can feel the excitement, you can feel the energy. And for me, it is this massive adrenaline rush that just, has me burning the candle at both ends, staying up to the wee hours in the morning and not wanting to go to bed because I just want to continue those conversations. Right. That's why my throat is shot now.
Yeah, exactly. Both of our voices are gone because I was probably speaking, and I know the whole thing about listening more or whatever, just because I was talking to so many people, but I probably was speaking 60 or 70% of the time that I was awake, during, during the conference. And there is an adrenaline rush of having more people, like-minded individuals, people that understand the day-to-day problems that you have. Like I said, CPAs, bookkeepers, QuickBooks consultants, IT consultants, software developers. Actually, it's very interesting to talk to the software developers because they're also really smart and they're really excited and innovative. And just having all these chats during the conference with people, it just gives you a lot of extra energy. So, quick infomercial. We're not getting paid to do this or anything like that. But if you miss this conference and you're looking for a sort of QuickBooks centric conference in 2022, this conference is the 2022 version of this conference will be in Orlando in June. And I'll just put a screen share here real quick. It's scalingnewheights.com. I personally think, honestly, that every single QuickBooks consultant that can afford to go to Orlando for 4 days in 2022 should go here.
I would
there's
say
so many things.
You can't afford not to go. It's the
Can't
opposite.
afford not to go. Correct.
And if the issue is finances, like, hey, check out some of my content on leveraging credit card points or this. If you're Canadian, there's a guy called the Prince of Travel. I'm sure there's guys in the US that can teach you how to get down to these conferences virtually for free, just using your credit card points. So there's ways to make this happen. I know you got to pay for admission. It's not completely free, but the value that you're going to get out of the knowledge, the relationships, and the drive that it gives you for your business is going to be a 10x multiple.
Of course. And the conference is $800. So you do got to pay that. For 3.5 days of training, $800 is a pretty good deal. You get breakfast. I got tons to say about breakfast and the quality of the food and stuff. We'll discuss that in a second, but you get breakfast, you get lunch. And if you talk to enough people, you will probably get dinner or an after party, light dinner / drinks comped as well. So for the most part, if you're pretty active in the conference and you latch on to one of the vendors or one of the speakers that ends up hanging out, with the vendors or get thought after the vendors, these things they're not private events, but they're sort of semi-private just because they want to be able to know more or less how many people are coming. Because when they do open bars, I mean, I don't even know how these bills look like. I'm sure they're incredible, but I do recommend it. Check them out, scalingnewheights.com. I would love to see double, triple the amount of people there, just because the more people that are there, the merrier. You get to network more. You get to chat with more like-minded individuals and unlike-minded individuals that you can learn from as well. So that's as much infomercial we'll do for Scaling New Heights. For the most part, we would love to see individual accountants and bookkeepers get there, improve there. And both Andrew and I spoke there this year, and we'll likely speak next year if we get invited to, and that sort of thing. So the next item on the agenda is, okay, let's do a review of it. Okay, so I'll start. Production values. I think that the main stage production values were wonderful. I mean, the lights, the sound, the video, wonderful. There was plenty of seating. In many ways, it felt strange that there was maybe triple the amount of seats as the amount of people. Like, that main stage could hold maybe like 3,000 people watching it, but it's only 700. So it did feel kind of
stands and stuff around this.
Correct, but it did feel like it felt empty just because of the relationship between between number of chairs and number of people. But it's just because of the number of people that were there and how big the place was. To its credit, that's a bit conducive to social distancing. So I think it gave people a choice, right? If you wanted to be cramped up with everybody else, you can be in the front. If you wanted to be sort of spaced apart from others, you could be at the back. I prefer, I mean, obviously, in a non-COVID situation, I prefer everybody to just sort of be in one place, just because it just feels like, we're all in this together instead of being all over the place and people walking in and out. So I think main stage, in my opinion, just production value was good. The food quality, the food part, particularly the lunch, I think it was great. It was well executed. You had tons of choices. I ended up eating fish for the most part, which is good because I wanted to do that. So having that choice is really good. And the quality of the training. So I think that for the most part, every single trainer in that conference wants to give a really high quality session. Some might not be as dynamic and engaging and funny and interactive as others. But
no one's as funny as you, Hector.
right. Yeah. I mean, I do try to spice things up and try to, I want to keep people awake because these things are from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. The speakers do need to figure out a way to get people more engaged. For the most part, I give the quality of the training of 4.5. I think it would, and I think the reviews of people in the trainings, pretty much as I go through the app and look at the reviews, are around the 4.5 anyway, 4.5 out of 5. So I think the quality is generally good. My criticism towards it, in my opinion, is I think there's too many sessions and they also go way too general. So I think that for advanced users, people that have been doing this for a long time, we're missing a lot of deep dive content. And I get it. You have 700 people. Some might be just getting into bookkeeping now, and some may be doing this for 20 years. The skill level varies quite a bit. Okay, what are your thoughts? What's your review?
So my thoughts are, and this is not universal to this conference, I have a problem with the time frame of sessions, an hour-long session. And this is fundamental across all conferences. I don't know who landed on an hour and where that came from, but I find an hour is too long to keep you like engaged and connected, and not long enough to dive deep into actually walking out with like technical skills on an individual subject. So I find it's like this really awkward space. Like TED Talks are 18 minutes for a reason, right? Like they're zoned into like just, and I think seeing like just shorter presentations that are about inspiring you, and then longer sessions, which I did see a little bit of this, where there's like a part 1, part 2, part 3. So if like you're coming for a technical deep dive into whether it's search engine optimization, whether it's, getting certified, you need to have a track that is going to be like multiple sessions long. So like if you're there for 3 days, you're taking multiple sessions, deep diving hard into that session where there's a part 1, a part 2, a part 3, part 4, and you're walking out with the actual technical skills to be able to do that. And I think in 1 hour, you can't really do that in my experience. I don't know, that it's just an opinion, take it for what it's worth. But I think more shorter sessions, and then, a few, very few longer multi-part sessions where you're deep diving. And you gotta be like, and this is gonna be the hard part, is like, what do you pick as like, because if you're gonna deep dive, if you're gonna have effectively like less topics, like what are you gonna deep dive onto, and who's gonna choose what those topics will be, because we all have different needs, and those needs evolve as our practice evolves, which is also part of the hard part for the people who have been coming multiple years, because what you need for your business evolves over time. So how do you make sure you're giving content to everyone who's at different places on their journey? Right.
Yeah, I agree. I feel that the content is best suited for brand new attendees for the most part.
Yeah.
You got the QuickBooks Online certification track, which it's like 6 sessions or 8 sessions, right? So somebody like that will feel that they got a full immersive training.
Yeah, a deep dive.
Right. Someone that maybe is trying to pick their niche, and they want to see 1 hour sessions of legal and construction and inventory or whatever. Like you just.
But I think those sessions should be 15 minutes. That's all you need to inspire someone and give them the tools to dive deeper and where to go. So like just 18 minutes on those, like, and I think Joe was talking, I hope we can share this. But that competition that they're talking about doing, I'll leave it at that, because I think that's going to be a really crazy, really fun thing.
What competition?
Oh, were you not, maybe you weren't there for this. Where they're talking about potentially bringing in all of the speakers and the writers, and having a competition for the best short presentation. So it's going to be like 10 to 15 minute long things, and they're going to have judges, and it's going to be like a competition for who's got
like a pitch.
The best.
Okay, like a pitch.
Yeah, like a pitch competition, but for content.
I love it.
I love it too. I was like, this is brilliant. I think that's the kind of stuff we need.
Yep.
And I hope I'm not letting the cat out of the bag, because I think we're in ideation stage on that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Sorry, Joe. But hopefully,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's going to be an amazing thing, and I think that would be incredibly powerful because it would give so much value. It's also going to push the speakers to really kick ass, and we all try our best. I know, I get nervous like organizing and getting my content. I really want my sessions to deliver value. Like that's the only reason I'm going is like. And for me, what fills my bucket is when I get those people who come up to me and say, great session.
Right.
And we're building our craft, right? Like we're trying to get better at this. And so like having these exercises and, having coaches and experts who will critique us and give us feedback on how to get better is win-win, right? Like
right, win-win,
we're going to learn and get better. It's going to bring amazing content to the community. And it's like sort of like a fun, competitive, but like in like a way that is designed to bring us all up, not to like pit us against each other.
Right. Yeah. There is a fine line on that one though, because competition is a competition, right? There's winners and losers.
Yeah, but I mean, we have leaderboards and we have stuff like that, and I think that while we do all want to strive to be the best, the amazing thing about our community is that we're not crabs in a barrel. We don't try and get to the top by pulling other members down. Right?
I do want to present an alternative vision to this, and I think that's a good idea. I think the best instructors or the best facilitators in any of these conferences or learning experiences is each of us individually, so our brain, right? So if we have the capacity to grasp something, if we have the capacity to engage into something, if we have the capacity to view things, we're talking about each attending individually, that's going to be your best teacher, right? So you can have the best, most captivating speaker out there, but if any individual person is not willing to learn, is not open-minded to learn, doesn't want to learn, they're not going to learn anything. So the alternative view to this would be, I think that possibly the best sessions are the ones and where the facilitator does less work, right? Where the facilitator's prowess or ability to engage or speaking skills, it's minimized, and the individual attendees' involvement is brought up to the top. Now, that will require to do more workshops. It will require people to want to talk to each other. It will require to design a learning, like a learning game. I don't want to call it a game, but a learning game in which people have, okay, these are the individual things that you're going to think individually. These are the things that you're going to discuss in group. These are the things that maybe you're going to present as a group. And these are the things where you're going to have Group A and Group B provide this really interesting insight with each other after you took a specific theme and talked about it with each individual person. I remember QB Connect 2019. I don't want to get too much into this, but one session that I felt was really, really powerful is a session in which I stopped talking and people were talking to each other, right? And then they got up and said, this is the idea we came up with, whatever the idea is. This is the idea that we came up with. And everybody claps and they get excited. And even the class is over, the person walks out and another attendee goes, hey, your idea was good. I would add this to it. That's the stuff that really adds up. So obviously that's a wish list for a different type of conference. But I think you did
that at QB Connect. I was part of your session where you were doing that. And I think you're right. That roundtable format where we're getting each other working together. And to be honest, I mean, this is one of the things that I think is great about you is that the way that you will plant a seed and then step back, the way that you did that with us for Friday Night Live, the way that you do that in the way that you're speaking. I think that's why people admire you so much, Hector, is because you're very much about planting the seed and then encouraging these people to become a part of the community. And the thing is, I think some people, find it hard to step up and engage. It's easier for other people to do that, right? And so we have to find a way to encourage and promote those people who have brilliant ideas, but maybe find it difficult to stand up and say them or to nominate themselves to be speakers. So I love that concept. And I think you're absolutely right. The more that we can create sort of those workshops and encourage people as a group to stand up and present their ideas, I think that would be a wonderful thing to have more of.
And I would love the conference meeting to be part of the learning process. Like you start a learning process, let's say 2 months prior to the conference, right? and then you build up let's say it's a marketing plan session. Let's just throw some. So you build up what you think the marketing plan is with some basic pointers. Then you come into the conference and you take a class, again, just a topic where they say, okay, your marketing plan should look like this. And it gets discussed a little bit by the speaker. Then you sit down, you refine it, talk it with others, kind of like build it better with others. And then you have kind of like a follow-up session or webinar after the conference 2 months later and give the whole thing an arc, because learning it happens in more than 1 day or more than 3.5 days. And the reality is there are so many sessions that your brain is so fried with the drinking and the socializing and the walking around anyway, that it's not like you're going to take home with you a lot, from all these conferences and all this information. I think that a few folks would love to start before the conference and then end after the conference. And the conference is just one of those steps. So that's probably, what I would envision the ideal conference to look like. And that probably, we're probably done with the last piece that we wanted to cover at the end of this talk with that. What are the areas of opportunities for you, Andrew? For me was, in my opinion, coffee. Now, I know not everybody drinks coffee, but some people drink coffee at 7 a.m. Some people drink coffee at 2 p.m. Some people drink coffee at 6 p.m. There needs to be a coffee station, in my opinion, in all conferences, all the time. I don't understand why they choose what time you can drink coffee.
Good coffee, too.
What?
Good coffee, too. Like people couldn't even go get Starbucks after whatever it was, 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. It was, I'd say, one of the biggest things that was lacking. I know water. Like water only came out at certain times. Like
water is the other thing. It's like there should be water everywhere. There should be water in the training sessions. There should be water for the speakers in the podium waiting for you. And in my experience, it wasn't like that. And drinks in general, like some people drink Coke, some people drink whatever. Like that stuff just needs to be throughout. Like the food was great, but I think the coffee and water execution wasn't there. It's a little thing, but sometimes it makes a difference. And on the other side of the coin, some vendors, I don't know if they foresaw this or whatever, they had water bottles with the logo of their company. And I actually walked into one of the vendors to get a water bottle. And because of that, I remember the vendor later on, when I bumped into the vendor in a bar, and the guy said, "Hey, I'm so-and-so from this company." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I got a water from your booth." And then all of a sudden we have a connection. Yeah. So I think the vendors were brilliant in doing that. And then maybe possibly you can, maybe do it like that. Maybe the vendors have hostage of all the water and you force people to go talk to the vendors. That's not a bad strategy, but in general, I think you need to have water and coffee and drinks all together. All right, what about the real conference, Andrew? Let's talk about the real conference. What's the real conference? So
the real conference is for you and me who are, like we said, some of the content might be directed at new people. So the real conference for people who've been around a while is the hallway conversations, the social scene afterwards, the parties. And I mean, they're amazing, but what is interesting is, like you said, some of these ones where they're smaller, it's hard to know what's going on, where it's going on, because it's not like a big giant T-sheets party, with the exception of the one that was done at Billy Bob's, right? And
that was paid.
Yeah, which was a paid sponsored one.
It's paid, yeah. And the other ones, by the way, I don't have any issue with paying $20, $30, $40, $50 to go to a place where you eat and you drink, and maybe what you pay doesn't pay for the whole thing, and the sponsor complements it. I have absolutely no issues with that. And you might require it in order to predict. The thing is that T-Sheets, for example, which spoiled us, which they had these humongous parties that was open to everyone in the conference. There was technically no limit, right? And they just, I guess, had a limited budget for some of these things. And obviously that in itself skew things up and maybe spoil us. So
it set the expectation, right?
Right. Absolutely. So all I want to tell you is, if you've never been in a conference like this, or if you haven't experienced that piece of it, is after people are relaxed and they're not in learning mode or teaching mode or student time mode or vendor representation mode or accountant mode, and they're just like sitting down having a couple of drinks, that's when they let loose from the perspective of, they start talking about their experiences as a business owner, as an accountant, as an employee of an accounting firm, about tough client situations, tough employee situations, vendors that deliver an app experience that was positive or negative, and you get really that sort of that insight that you could not get anywhere else. There's no blog article or social media place. It is right there when you're sitting down having a drink, where a lot of these people just, they let loose on this stuff. And I share a lot, because for my nature, but there's a lot of people that I see in conferences that are very quiet, during the whole conference, very quiet. But then in the bar, they're just, they're talking. And I'm not promoting drinking as a way of social lubricant, but that's what it is. That is what it is. It's when you're having fun. It's when you're not thinking about work. It's when you're not processing numbers that you're really, in many ways, you're at your best from an ideation standpoint, from an inspiration standpoint.
Absolutely. Like one of the most influential conversations I had at this conference that was like sort of a pivotal moment was a conversation that I ended up having with Kelly Parks and Peter Cullen. I don't think I've ever seen Peter Cullen speak. He's been around this community for a long time. And he has so much knowledge, so much experience. And he's just like, he's kind of a quiet guy, but he's got a lot of wisdom. And we were just having this frank and honest conversation about, what I'm doing and the things that I'm doing on and why I'm doing it. And he helped me like just, some really like honest feedback in not a critical way, but that was really insightful and helpful to me, that helped sort of guide my path. And that's a perfect example of like those sideline conversations where you've got people who are supportive, who are giving you feedback. And I don't think it was sitting there trying to tell me what to do with anything. We were just asking questions, just being curious.
Right.
But it gets my mind thinking. You know what I mean? And those conversations, and it just so happened that it was like we were there with Kelly, and we were talking about that, the topic of what, what's your why and why do you do things. And this is the funny thing, is we end up having these conversations like, you think, you'd be talking about sports, or you'd be talking about the news, or no, we end up like talking about like business strategy and, whatever pain points we're having in our businesses. And watching like you and Megan have like deep dive conversations on topics that are specific to issues she's facing, and like the passion and energy when I see you two have like those conversations, or when I see that happen and take place amongst other people who are just sharing knowledge and experience and things where they're bumping into similar things or similar issues. That is like the incredible value. And it's not like those conversations aren't an hour long, but they have huge, deep, long-lasting impact.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And you get other people's point of views too, because in the real world, we're sort of siloed, in our own business, head down, taking care of business, dealing with tax returns or whatever. And we see other accountants that are local in our area as competitors. But when we get near, somehow the script flips and we see everybody as collaborators. It's really interesting, how these conferences, in many ways, because you are taking 3-4 days off work, because you're traveling, because you're spending the money, because you're spending the energy, in many ways, you almost everybody wants to get the most out of it, right?
Yeah.
I think that there's this sort of silence. Yeah, there's a silence boost of energy that happens is, hey, I'm here. I might as well just do everything possible that possibly can do. That's why you and I, it was clearly time to go to bed at 10 and we didn't. And then again at midnight and then we didn't. And then at 2 a.m. and then, okay, well, yeah, let's push it. And that's because the bar's closed, because we probably could have gone longer. So let's move on to Intuit's representation in here. So the most obvious representation is Intuit wasn't a sponsor. Not being a sponsor means, or at least from this context, it means not having a booth with employees, receiving feedback, talking to people about the innovations of QBO, right? And that lack of representation turned into people having more of a reason to just sort of talk negative about all the negative things about Intuit. Look, Intuit is in reality an incredible company. You look at just the growth, the people that work there are brilliant. The best experiences I've had in my career are largely due to my involvement with Intuit. Intuit is a great company. I'm involved with them in so many ways: brand ambassador, trainer, writer, webinar guy, advertising face, for the YouTube videos. I'm involved with Intuit with so many tentacles. But I can tell you that deep in the roots of Intuit, they're a great company, but because of so many changes during COVID, price changes, removing certain things that a pro advisors felt like they were entitled to, and they just removed them or changed them, removing features. Like, there was a huge, this whole thing started where they removed the number of chart of accounts you can have and this, going back to 2 years, you can have in a regular QuickBooks file, it's up to 250. And all of a sudden you have to go to the highest version to do that. That was, in my opinion, that was sort of the start of them just completely being disconnected with our community. Like to accountants, the most sacred thing is chart of accounts integrity. Like messing with my chart of accounts, it's a big blow. And for whatever reason, they decided that was the thing that we're going to measure. And from there, all sorts of things happened in the past 2 years. The introduction of QB Live, which is great for Intuit, and possibly not even negative for our profession, but the messaging was just so messed up, right? And then we have the introduction of QuickBooks Line Advanced and the focus on that, and then removal of the regular purchase of QuickBooks Desktop and making a subscription only, which Canadians are used to that from before. You guys were kind of the experimental. So Intuit has just done so many things. And again, changes, companies do changes and they're moving fast and they're changing fast. But if they're not there, boots in the ground to guide us through why they're doing it, or continually receiving feedback so they can improve the product, so they can counter value the anger or the anguish against all these changes, just so the lack of representation was just disappointing, period. Now, that being said, there was pro advisor certification programs that they have some certificate, they have some participation that way. I think maybe they pay the trainers directly, or maybe they pay the conference something to be able to have that. And they had one Intuit employee that I knew was Intuit employee. Maybe there was a spy in there somewhere that I didn't know, but there was one Intuit employee who was an executive or vice president or something, who's Ted Callahan, who, by the way, individual, brilliant person, but he was thrown into the lion's den. Like, they threw him into the conference and they said, you're going to be the one guy from Intuit that's not only going to be representing Intuit, but you're also going to be answering questions. And I don't know if they were ready or not, but all the questions were about the things that we hate that QuickBooks has done in the past 2 years. So the entire discussion of QuickBooks was just negative. It was just negative. Even I, which is uncharacteristic of me, even I, like, all my grievances basically boiled down to like the one spot that I had a chance to talk to Ted from Intuit for 20 minutes. And I just let him have it. Like, afterwards, I was like, holy crap, was that too intense? I mean, I told him every single grievance I had from Intuit, in 20 minutes. And the guy was like looking at me like this. But the nice thing is that he was listening. Like, I felt like he took what I said to heart, and it was validated by some of the questions and comments from the crowd. So in my opinion, Intuit, if you're watching and listening, you gotta find a way to have representation here. I know COVID travel restrictions are complicated. I understand, but especially the year that you decided not to have QuickBooks Connect, I think it was a little bit of a miss. But hey, no big deal. It was only 700 people. Next year, Skinny New Heights will probably have 1,000 or 1,500, especially because we're doing this and there's like renewed energy. I think that this conference signals the comeback of in-person conferences, in my opinion. So Intuit should definitely think about a strategy to get there again, so they can get the boots on the ground, to get the nuanced discussion of the feedback, not click on the feedback and have a little box and type on the box feedback inside QBO. No. You can't explain nuance in a feedback box inside QuickBooks Online. You got to talk to the person, right? You got to shake hands. You got to maybe have a drink with them so they can understand how you're feeling and why you're feeling that certain way. Did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. It's funny. Like, I had such a interesting thing. So I ended up bumping into Jim McGinnis. So he was the guy who actually got me into this whole cloud community thing. And what sunk me with Intuit and what sold me on Intuit was that they listen. And that was his pitch back then, when QBO was not exactly, let's call it was a minimum viable product back then, is maybe a nicest way to put it. And my relationship started with me basically giving them all my grievances that what I had and why I didn't like the product and why I was committed to zero and I didn't need them. And how they effectively convinced me was like, hey, we're not perfect, but we're here to listen. And they truly did. And I felt very fortunate to be part of the voice of our community, to be able to give them feedback, to give them suggestions. And what I always appreciated was they never wanted me to hold back. They wanted me to tell them how I really felt and be upfront and honest. And then I would watch and I would see that feedback have an impact on the direction of the product. And that endeared me to them in a way that is why I am so pro into it, and which will allow me, which will encourage me to be a lot more forgiving with them when they do make missteps, right? Because of the loyalty that they built with me over the years. And, I would say that this was a bit of a misstep. I mean, on my, one of the suggestions that Joe had said is like, pick the 3 people that you want to connect with at this conference and like plan that. And one of them was Ted Callahan, and I did not get a chance to bump into him, and I missed him by like seconds. And it was great to hear Caleb's summary of your conversation with him and the way he.
You walked in after I gave him the grievance pitch, right?
Yeah, I missed it. And the way Caleb summarized it was brilliant. I was really disappointed that I missed that. And you're absolutely right. I think this was a miss, and I get that it's complicated. But I can also tell you that it's not just this one conference where I feel like I'm missing some of that communication that was so strong in the past. And then when that happens, when there's a gap in communication, our mind fills in the void.
Right. You fill in the gaps. Right.
We fill in the gaps. We draw our own conclusions. Oh, they're going direct to consumer. They don't care about us anymore. There's never going to be another conference again.
Correct.
And we're filling stuff in with the worst case scenario. So the most important thing that I think that they can do is, fill those gaps themselves and make sure that they're doing what they always did. And I get that it's hard. And, what I can tell you is one of the important things that I think is a part of the culture of this community is that forgiveness is an important part of that.
Sure.
As long as people, can own their mistakes, be upfront with them, and can create a path forward that ensures those mistakes never happen again. That's all I expect from everybody in my life.
And transparency. Like there was one thing. Yeah. There was one part where and I think I was the only one that clapped. Okay, so I must have been the weirdest person there. But one of the questions they asked to Ted Callahan from Intuit was, "Hey, QuickBooks Online Advanced is getting too expensive for my small business clients. Are you going to reduce the price of that?" And we knew what the answer was. Everybody knew what the answer was. And everybody was ready to, okay, it's about to happen. The spiel is going to come in. We're going to get the spiel about, powering prosperity and this and that. And because of that, I'm value. And he said, no, it's not within our strategy. Yeah, it's not within our strategy to take our current products and lower the price of it. And that's it. And you know what? I want that. Like honesty. I want that. Like I don't need a long drawn out corporate answer. Just tell me yes,
don't blow
it's
smoke,
possible,
right?
Or no, it's not possible. So I can move on and think about other things and not keep or hang on to things that might or might not happen. Okay, so let's move on to maybe some of the vendors and sponsors, because Intuit wasn't part of that group.
Yeah.
So the first one I'll bring out this one first. So Patriot Software, which was, from my experience, a small rinky-dinky payroll company that was there, like charging like super low, like $10 a month for payroll. I think mostly in the US or only in the US, I think. And it connects to QuickBooks Online. And they've been in many conferences, and they're always this little tiny booth in the corner with a blue logo. All of a sudden, they're like in the middle of the booth, in the middle of the show floor, with probably the biggest booth. They're purple now, so there's some rebranding there. And I think the CEO or the chief legal counsel or whatever was up in stage in a main stage presentation, which, by the way, way too long, honestly. That just like way too long. I understand they pay to be up there and stuff like that, but just way too long. Okay, you can keep it to 10 minutes. If you're gonna be the main stage, keep it to 10 minutes, especially when you represent a software company, just because in back of my mind says, okay, you're selling something. Okay, but he did announce something that was really interesting. And at the time, it wasn't known information. and he released something that was just happening, which is that we're closing a deal with some of the Waltons, some of the grandkids of the Waltons, the founders of Walmart. Now, does that mean Walmart is part of Patriot? No, it doesn't mean that. Does it mean that they have Walmart level money? It doesn't mean that. But having one of the richest people in the world, the richest families in the world, support a particular software company, probably because their VC company or whatever needed to fill that category, right? The fintech category. It could mean something. I mean, it could signal, tons of funding, and funding means three things: marketing, development, and talent, right? Yeah. So they can either have tons of money to get their brand out there as a QuickBooks. Oh, wait, I didn't mention this. They were a tiny payroll company, but they just pivoted and opened a GL. Yeah. Okay, they have a couple thousand customers. It's not big yet. I think it just launched, but there might have been this silence signal that, hey, we're gonna go after QuickBooks' business. It was just very evident that they're gonna be after QuickBooks' business, and maybe possibly with a level of funding, they could make a dent. Now the reality is, Andrew, that maybe they have the money to find talent outside the industry to come and disrupt it, but you gotta catch them up in accounting, and that's the thing that most people don't understand, that accounting takes a long time to learn, just like the nuances of accounting. Or the alternative would be to steal talent from already successful companies. So those already successful companies, I can think of one big one, right?
Which one, where would you steal your talent from?
Yeah, where they were probably going to want to steal that talent. So if Intel wants to keep the talent, they better keep their eyes open, because Patriot might be after their business. You want to move on, or you want to add something to that?
Well, I think the only thing I want to add is what I'm seeing is a lot. I think the interest from VC in the fintech community is just like more and more money is coming into this community, which is a positive, right? It means faster development, means more rapid development. We're seeing more and more money coming in on a daily basis to fund people. And I think that for the most part, that is a good thing. I think, VC it's a blessing and a curse. I think the one thing is interesting is to look around that showroom and see who's VC backed and who's bootstrapped, and see the difference in their growth strategies, because the growth strategies are very, very different. And I think VC is great because it gives you, a lot of money and a lot of spending power. But sometimes that can just amplify the wrong things, right? Because it
ungrounds you, right? It ungrounds you.
It ungrounds you because you gotta go hire 150 people that we're gonna develop. I want my money back out in 2 years, right?
Right.
Whereas, I think the problem that you really need something in between. You need the bootstrap mentality with the VC money. And I don't think I've seen that great combination yet. And I'd say that's the only comment I really have on, the app partners when it comes to, VC and people coming in and seeing that. I think we need to see a bit of the balance of spend all money out. Let's try and, get our money back out in 2 years, and let's build longevity. Right.
I agree. Yep. Now the other big vendor that was there, I think that was the biggest vendor, was Expensify.
Oh yeah.
And I'll take two things. I'll do two things. One is I noticed Expensify's business model moving into being more of a credit card company than just a expense management software company. So the first time I saw that was with Divvy, and Divvy was just acquired by Bill.com, which, by the way, Bill.com did not have a booth, but Divvy had a booth. So it's interesting that maybe Bill.com is big enough that it doesn't need to be in show floors, but they're going to build that piece of the business. So having Divvy there and having Expensify move the business model to this sort of credit card company, plus connectivity, plus expense reimbursement, plus, budget management, I found that very, very interesting. And they had the coolest booth for sure. Maybe you want to tell us about that.
And they were giving away a car. Jesus.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They brought a Tesla on stage.
Yeah. That's crazy, right?
I find that kind of gimmicky, but we can move on that.
Who won the car? Do we know?
I think it's later, in the future or something. Yeah. No direct reward. No satisfaction. We're not gonna get satisfaction.
No immediate satisfaction.
Oh, knowing that, yeah. But you said something about Expensify during our pre-show that you thought was pretty interesting. Is Expensify's big megaphone they have, and how they have their own set of corporate culture and political views or whatever, and they want customers that think like them or think with them.
Yep.
And that was probably one of the only apps that kind of led with that or leads with that in the back end. But Patriot Software,
yeah, I'd say Patriot's doing the same thing.
they did it like, yeah, they were like Patriot,
yeah.
America, and again, that's fine. I love the country that I'm in. I'm American, but just in today's political area, it's just, I think both are wrong in terms of trying to be more political than a software company. Just as an investor, I would prefer to be investing in a software company that's breaking ground with technology. Like I don't care about your political beliefs or whatever. I mean, as long as you're not doing evil, just make a really good software company. Otherwise, I'm not sure I care too much about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely interesting, and I was able to have a great conversation with David Barrett about that. It's not probably fair to talk too much about that conversation, but it's definitely seems to be happening where the apps are taking sort of a perspective. And I had a great conversation with Megan, as you know, and she sort of thinks like we are in the era, and there are a lot of people who think that we are in the era where it's important that we stand up and have a voice. I'm not sure. I haven't figured out my opinion on that yet. I wonder, like, I can see her perspective from an individual standpoint, that as individuals, it's important that we, when we see something that we feel strongly about, that we voice that opinion, especially if it's something that we think is wrong. Now, should that be in the app ecosystem? I don't know, because if your objective is market share and market growth, don't you just limit your market share and your market growth? And I mean, I guess isn't ultimately, the company's responsibility back to its shareholders and for growth, or is it to the greater good? I don't know. It's hard for me to form an opinion. It's still early for me to have an opinion on that yet.
Sure. Yeah, maybe a topic for a different show.
That could be a whole fucking show.
It's deep. Yeah, correct. Mm-hmm. We got like 10 minutes left, so let's do a run through some of the smaller vendors per se that were there. So we saw a company called Practice Protect that was led by an Australian speaker who spoke on the main stage. Maybe Andrew, give us a 3-minute elevator pitch on that one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, basically, it takes your cloud apps and gives you a way of securely managing your passwords and your protection on that. And it's really about cybersecurity, which is an ever increasing issue. And I think it's a really important aspect that is being overlooked by a lot of businesses, is cybersecurity in general. And I did a session with them and the guys from Garcia, which I also consider to be a cybersecurity app as well. And we saw a couple other players in the cybersecurity space, and we saw that talked about on the main stage. And I think
exactly, I think that was important. I think that was very important.
And for the first time ever that I've ever seen at a conference. And I know personally in the work that I'm starting to do in this space and understanding that the scale of cyber attacks is growing exponentially. I know a few people that have gotten hit by ransomware. So yeah, and people aren't talking about it, and because it's embarrassing, or for whatever reason, people don't want to share their stories.
Well, it's exposure, right? Like, all my clients are going to find out, and that sort of thing. So so I think it was very interesting that they took what's probably a product that already exists, like a password manager, cybersecurity, but frame it or frame it for the accounting community. I think Jamie's absolutely brilliant with that strategy, right? Because I agree. Stuff like this existed. What he sort of did is packaged it up for the community, brought in some extra services over and above the password thing, like legal agreements and stuff like that you do need to have in place, right? And he's just going to give you like one stop. Here it is. There you go. Directly targeted at this niche. Like, he's niching down, which is what we talk about in our community. Exactly. The apps need to do that too. Yeah. Let's move on to Lisio. So Lisio is a practice management app. You use it. Yeah. Andrew, I'll let you do the pitch on that. I wouldn't consider it a practice management app. It's a communication tool. Is communication really tool. Okay.
I mean, I have an enormous respect for Chris, who's the leader at Lisio, and Allison Ball, who's there. She's so well respected in the community. I mean,
Very
if
much.
there's anyone who can build and create change, it's those two. And I think our community is proof that this accounting industry is ready for disruption and innovation, and they're trying to disrupt the way that we communicate. And he has a vision for how we communicate with our clients that will really make a dramatic improvement. And I know I can't speak for every firm out there, but I can tell you communication is one of the biggest areas my firm needs to work on.
Right. Yeah. And I don't use Lisio yet, but they bought me dinner, so I'm gonna look at the app now for sure. That's for sure. So I'd like to thank them for dinner. That was a really nice dinner, by the way.
And I should be cards on the table. They are the ones who paid for me to come down and speak.
Sure.
So they were my very, very first app sponsorship. They're not sponsoring this. This is organic.
Right.
But they did sponsor me to come down and speak. I wouldn't have probably been at the conference if it weren't for them, which I am grateful for. And what I think is also interesting is that they worked with a number of different people in our community. And I think that the way that they're starting to listen, right? They're recognizing and trying to find who are the voices in our community so that they can listen and drive the direction of their organization as well. And they're taking all the best of what the people in our community are doing and trying to absorb that and make their company the best. I think
exactly.
That's awesome.
Let's give a quick shout out to a fellow Canadian.
Yes,
right?
yes, Yusuf West.
Relay. There was a bank there. It was a virtual bank. And what I like to mention about them is I went to the booth a couple of times just because I actually personally know, not that I'm friends with them, but I've known them from my relationship with HubDoc, which is Joseph, the CEO or the founder, whatever his title is, and then Blake Oliver, who's working for them now, who's a powerhouse in our industry and tons of credibility. So Blake Oliver going to work for Relay was like all of us. I wasn't paying much attention to them before, but now I am. I'm gonna open a bank account in Relay so I can get firsthand experience. I've always been pro the big brick and mortar banks, Chase and stuff like that. But now I'm starting to cave in and look at these tech companies because they can move so much faster innovation wise. And given that you have an ex-HubDoc employee, HubDoc being a company that semi-revolutionized the whole concept of document fetching, automated document fetching, I'm thinking there's going to be some interesting movements coming from this company. The other one that I'd like to mention is A2X, who was not a sponsor.
But speaking of HubDoc.
Speaking of HubDoc, we'll talk about that in a second. A2X was not a sponsor. They were not there at all in the conference, but their CEO or one of the owners or one of the something that's up there, Jamie Shulman, was walking around the show floor with an A2X hat. And he was one of the founders, the CEOs of HubDoc before, who was sold to Xero, I believe. Yeah, to Xero. And, I don't work with Xero, so anything that goes into the dark side, I don't look at that anymore. I know that you're a hybrid user. You still have some Xero customers, but I just never even touched Xero. But I found it also fascinating that an ex-HubDoc employee, again, an app that was very well respected and innovative, now is going to get into the e-commerce space. And now you're going to have, hopefully we're going to see some deeper development into like data automation and data documentation automation coming. So I'm excited to see a friendly face, a familiar face in A2X, which is quick and commercial. It allows you to bring your Amazon transactions and Shopify transactions into QuickBooks. You can do more than that, but that would be my quick elevator speech. All right, we got like 5 minutes left. I'll talk about ConnectBooks for a second. Again, another player in the e-commerce space. Only reason why I'm talking about them, I've never used them before, is because there was water in that booth, and that attracted. And then I chatted with one of the guys in the after parties who was telling me about their backstory and how they come up with this. And again, it's very, very interesting and worth mentioning that you have all these companies attacking the e-commerce space. And I think e-commerce is both the present and the future, worth looking at. So I wanted to give them a quick shout out. Andrew, I know you wanted to give Dex a shout out too.
Yeah, and I think Dex also ties into a couple other firms that we wanted to talk about, because now we have Dext Prepare, which people know Dext as, and Dext Precision, which we were one of the beta people on their Dext Precision platform, which is sort of like these cleanup and workflow tools. But there's a couple other players who are coming into this space. So as big as e-commerce is, which we all recognize as being like huge right now, everyone talks about e-commerce. I see a lot of now play into this cleanup and workflow space coming down the line as well. And I mean, this is stuff that we need, I think, until the process is completely automated. These tools go a long way in helping us to manage our process.
Yeah, and for the people that
kudos to Dext.
For the people that never heard of Dext before, I think it's worth mentioning, Andrew. Sorry to interrupt you. They used to be Receipt Bank.
Yes.
And some people know them as Receipt Bank. So anyway, sorry. That.
And so, that rebranding is, and that's again, another topic for a whole nother conversation is rebranding of apps. And, I'll probably still call them Receipt Bank, like my Infusionsoft, which is my CRM I use, is actually called Keep, but I still keep calling it Infusionsoft.
Correct.
There's a lot of people in our community who still refer to Dext as Receipt Bank, which will always date them. But I'd love to have a conversation with you sometime about rebranding and whether it's right.
Sure.
What do you think of Dext and whether it really is drunk texting or Dexting?
Yeah. No, it's a weird. I'm not a big fan of the name, honestly. But if the app is good, that's good enough for me. So I'll give a shout out to two other companies. A company called Keeper App. These two guys had a little booth there. It's the first time even getting into this world. They've never been in a conference before. We're chatting for them for a long time in the bar. They're doing interesting things. It looks like they're trying to solve a problem, which is help bookkeepers have just like one place to talk to customers, to do task management, workflow management, perform tasks. Which again, it looks like all the companies are doing this. Like all the companies are doing a combination, like Lisio, like a combination between client communications, workflow management, complete the tasks, maybe send the client reports or something like that. All the apps are trying to, many apps are trying to solve this. This is one of them doing it. I wish him tons of luck. Another app called Zenit, or a company called Zenit. The app is called Auto Review. Actually, this was the only app I actually did a trial for right after the webinar. And the reason for that is because it's always been in my blood that I wanted to own an app or create an app around the stuff that takes me the longest, which is cleaning up QuickBooks files. And the app might not be ready yet because it's in the infancy stages, but it's just really, really neat, like their approach to it. Like when I have one place that shows you all the issues, potential issues with your accounting, and one simple click to change them. They are going to need some help fixing some of the logic in terms of what we look at and what's more important and how they can automate some of these things. But I mean, you can do all sorts of things. I don't want to give these people free advertising because if they want me to do an in-depth video, they got to pay for that. Anyway, all right, or sponsor something that Andrew and I create. So anyway, I think that we did cover everything. Maybe in a 1-minute summary, Andrew, what would your ideal conference look like next year? Scaling New Heights or otherwise? It doesn't matter. And I'd like to mention real quick, once again, if you like this conference and you're looking for a conference like this next year, Thrive is the theme. Scaling New Heights, the name of the conference, Orlando, June. Check them out, scalingnewheights.com. Joe, there's your free advertising. Yeah. That's as much you're going to get from me for the whole year. It's up to you to build another kick-ass conference. I think this year, personal message to Joe, you did a heroic effort despite the efforts of pulling this thing together. And I'm so happy that I went there. It was a really great signaling of the beginning of the end of the depressing COVID mindset that we've had for so long. That conference this week, it just felt like we're getting back to normal. And I'm really, really happy that it happened and that I was there. So that being said, Andrew, what would your ideal conference look like?
So my ideal conference is going to be, I can't wait to see this concept of a teach-off. We'll refer to it as, a friendly competition between speakers, short, sweet, powerful. So I'm looking forward to seeing some of that. I'd love to see some more deep dive on some of the technical stuff. And of course, for me, it's all about the social, right? So I think the more that we can encourage those social things, and I think actually the idea of having smaller breakouts sessions, I kind of don't mind that. Like, I like the idea of like everyone having like smaller dinners, and then you come back for drinks after dinner.
Right. I agree.
And I think what would be great to see is, I personally like the conferences to start a little later. 7 a.m.
7 a.m. is too much.
It's too much. So I'd like to see them start later. Because a lot of us, I get that not everyone wants to stay up till 2 a.m. like us, Hector, and some people are reasonable, responsible human beings. But just maybe a little bit balanced, because they can still get up early and go through their emails and get prepared, right? I'm
actually fine with them starting early, but I think if the conference ends earlier and we get dinner out of the way quicker, like if the conference figures out dinner as well, like maybe the dinner itself is also like a session. Like think of it that way. Like so you have 10 different types of dinners, led by
dinner where you get PD with your dinner, Hector?
Right, exactly. You get some CP with your dinner, which there wasn't many of those, right?
Just one.
Right. It would be. I think it would be interesting that dinner will be covered too. That way you stay in the conference without the educative part, just straight dinner, like just dinner and fun. But you're sort of done with everything at 7 p.m. Then you can get your drinking bar stuff happening. But by midnight, you're like, okay, I'm conferenced out. But because the conference ends at 6, and then we figure out dinner, and dinner starts at 8, and then like the time that you want to socialize starts like at 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. So naturally, you're going to run your course through midnight. I don't know. I'm just saying.
But I see, the thing is, I just know myself, and like I'm still gonna, and that just means I'm gonna be too drunk. Like if we start too early. So I think the timing is fine. I just think that like for some of us, we're gonna be there till the very last minute, no matter what, because we just crave being around each other, and we have this FOMO that if we go to bed, we're missing out on a great conversation. We can't possibly miss it.
There's a lot of FOMO going on in that conference. Yeah.
I think no matter what time you like. Some of us are just going to be there till like last call every night, no matter what. And I'm one of those guys. There are people who are more responsible who could be like, I've done enough. I can go to bed at a reasonable time. Right. I'm just not one of them. So I'm one.
Enough is not one of those words that is built into my vocabulary, I guess.
Yeah. But I do think I like the idea of like, I think dinner could be part of the conference. But I do think I like the idea of it being like smaller groups, like almost.
I agree.
Like, you're picking a session for your dinner, right?
Right, correct, exactly.
And I have been to dinner sessions before where it can be done really well.
Right, correct.
It's just about short presentations, in between as you're waiting for the meals to come, but still lots of time to talk with the people at your table.
I think you don't even need the presentations. You just have an employee of the company at every one of the tables, facilitate a conversation to say, hey guys, while we eat, let me ask you a question. What do you guys think about? And don't convince them your app is great. Ask them what should our app or our category do differently, and just get people chatting and passionate about what they want while they eat without being sold to as a sales pitch. You can do that really well and elegantly.
Like fortune cookie type of thing where you open it up and like every person has a different topic. You'd be like, what's your topic?
Too. Yeah.
My topic is XYZ. Let's have a conversation about that.
Right. Without having to look, people remember, like when you're taught something or you're fed, they remember you. Trust me. Yeah. You don't have to, do a slide deck. You don't need to. You don't need to. So anyway, that's it, man. We were trying to keep it under an hour. I think we went just over an hour, but thanks for doing this. I think it was fun.
Well, thanks for having me, Hector. I love chatting with you.
Yeah, always, man. So I'll see you in the next conference, I guess.
See you at the next conference.